Hey guys, welcome to Wisdom of the Grandmaster. I'm by myself today for this one, simply because I'm answering a question that was sent to me. It's a great question. I love great questions. I don't get that many. I get some bad questions, but I don't get many great questions. And this was simply, I'm on an elevator, and a guy gets on the elevator. We're alone. He has a knife. His intent is robbery, and he realizes that, hey, this guy could identify me. I'm going to kill him. What do you do? Okay, so I'm going to go through this. This is very multifaceted. And there'll be lots of people with lots of answers that are technique bound. No, won't work. Forget your techniques. Techniques are something that teaches you about movement. They are not solutions to real life. If you think they're solutions to real life, you're going to be in for some big surprises if you ever meet anyone who's formidable. And somebody with a knife in close quarters like this is formidable. First comment I'm going to make on it is the scenario is a little unlikely. However, it's well worth addressing. Now, why do I say it's unlikely? He'd probably just stab you and take your money. There would probably be no communication going on there whatsoever. Simply because time is of the essence on an elevator. Because people get on and off. It stops on floors. Therefore, somebody who is thinking of doing this on an elevator, it's probably been well premeditated. It's not going to be like out in the street type of a thing. Now, I'm not saying that isn't possible. Everything is possible, right? And the truth is, unlike what people practice in that they've taken from Hollywood, nobody's going to come at you with a knife. Not going to be any of that stuff. And they're not going to show you the knife either. The knife that cuts you is a knife that you don't see. And under most circumstances, you will never see this knife. That's why becoming very aware is very, very important. Second thing, when I get on an elevator that is not crowded, like if I get on an elevator myself, I stand by the control panel every time. Why do I do that? If somebody gets on the elevator who's a problem and is aggressive, there's a stop button. That stop button, you ever been on an elevator where that stop button's hit? It's not a nice stop. It's like when a train stops, right? It's not pleasant. Or somebody hits emergencies, brakes on buses, things like that. It's not a nice stop. It's a lockup, right? And that allows you to take action. It also sounds an alarm, right? So that side of it being put away. Many years ago, I don't even know how many years ago, it's a long time ago, I was asked to do a seminar for ambulance attendants. And the reason was, inside of an ambulance, which is very close, the rules that govern how social workers, and an ambulance attendant is in a sense a social worker because they are dealing with the public under the control of the government of Ontario in this case. But inside this confined space, they do not have to follow something, or they didn't back then, which is called the Ontario Nonviolent Crisis Intervention Program, which is the biggest load of shit that I have ever seen come out of an alleged expert in self-defense. Only thing that thing will do is get people killed. So as an example, if an ambulance attendant goes into the home, they must follow the guidelines of this thing. People who work with disabled people who in group homes, things like that, must follow these guidelines. Otherwise, they are subject to prosecution. And it's another typical case, and I will say this, of the government being more concerned about the patient than about the attendant, whereas it should be equal. They always talk about equality, but they don't have a clue what that word means. They should look it up in a dictionary while they're calling people conspiracy theorists when they don't know the definition of either of those two words either. Anyways, how do we deal with this? Right? First off, get to the idea to your head, you are going to bleed. There is no way around that. You do not confront somebody with a knife and not bleed. If you don't bleed, man, the Lord was looking after you that day. because you're going to bleed. I used to train with my oldest son doing knife work, and we used live knives. And there was one day at Cramden's in Windsor where we were sitting there and we had something to eat. We were having a few drinks, and Kurt asked one of the girls for a steak knife, and she brought it to us. And there, we made a mess. I was cut, he was cut. We were doing certain things while we were sitting there. We apparently were quite entertaining. I can't believe they didn't call the police on us, but they did know us very well anyway. All sorts of scars. First thing that you have to do is you have to make sure, since you know you are going to bleed, you present body parts to sacrifice for that, where there is bone. Not this. It's certainly not this. Cut your tendons, your fingers are gone. Right? You can't use your hands anymore. You present bone. Right? Now, also not known to the public is the the radial artery lies between the two bones. Therefore, you're not going to get a cut that's going to cut the artery on these sides. Right? So the position is this. The next thing is you are still going to use the same principles that I teach in Kosho. When you first learn to escape, it's a big motion. Very, very big motion. And that's because it's too hard to teach someone a small motion. In all martial arts, we teach these big motions, punching and all this stuff, because the muscles have to be trained, the brain has to be trained in order to respond correctly. And then as time goes by, it's supposed to shrink down into small motions. Now, one of the big things taught in Kosho is what I refer to as covert operations, where your motion almost goes undetected. And you do that by using the lower base of the body to move. The hips and the feet move. You can evade. So if somebody is coming this way with a knife towards you, you want to get on the outside of that. Right? But it doesn't take much body movement to do that. It's just a case of you're going to rotate the hips to get out of the way. It takes training. Right? But once you're into it, you stop doing the big motions that you teach people. I used to call it cheating. And then the more I worked with Hanshi Jutnik's information, the more I understood that it was just simply advancement. And when somebody is coming to stick you with a knife or to slash you with a knife or whatever the case may be, it still works. It doesn't matter what it is, because you are moving your body based on their motion, not based on the weapon itself. You cannot focus on that knife. You probably won't see it anyway, so you treat everything like it's a knife. This is one of the things about Kosho is you're treating everything like it's a knife, right? Because a fist, yeah, it's a knife, right? Because you always train for the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario, even though you can treat it like it's a low escalation. So, there's this rotation motion. The next thing that goes with that, which is difficult, and this was one of the things that we were actually doing at Cramden's that one day, is sensitivity. So, I don't have a knife here, but if I'm sticking a knife into somebody's arm here, the tendency the human being has is to push against the knife, right? So it comes up here, and they tend to want to push against it. You watch people who practice gun training, gun disarms, another one of my favorite subjects. Put the gun to the forehead. They will lean against the gun, because actually somebody told them once that they can jam the, I can't think of what it's called, doing that. Yeah, no, you can't, right? When in actuality, you should yield to this pressure. So one of the trainings is to have someone put a dull knife. And when you train for knife defense, it's always a real knife. It's never plastic. It's never rubber. It's a real knife, just not sharp. Because the brain reacts to steel differently than it reacts to plastic or rubber. The brain will sense that danger. When it's a piece of plastic, it doesn't sense the danger. Right? Because everything's about training the mind. And so when the knife goes here, you learn to yield with it. So as they push, they may pierce, but they will come off because of that movement. Now that actually is taught in Sistema. I cover that in the humane pressure point tactics, the high escalation course. Great, great stuff. And that motion is actually an octagon movement in of itself because you're taking an angle. Now, in that particular case, when you're training that, you're working all the different areas of the body, from the knees, the hips, the body, the shoulders, all of that. But that is the yield that goes with it. Then, when you are able to evade the first thing, you attack what is attacking you, because that knife has to go out of play. Right? You don't take a swing at the guy's head or something like that, because that allows them to sense where you are, because there will be a delay as you rotate. There will be a delay in the what happened here. I missed. As you're trying to do some big motion like that, simply go after triple warmer 11 on the arm and break something. Now, that is case by case by case by case. Right? It will never happen the same every time. This is one of the problems with techniques in martial arts, is martial artists believe techniques work. They don't work. Now, how well does this actually work? Phenomenally well. Okay. However, it's not an easy solution. It's a I must train solution. I saw a video years ago of Honi Jutnik teaching a seminar. And it was very early in the morning. They'd been out quite late that evening because they did a seminar. But when I do weekend seminars, it's Friday night, Saturday, all day Saturday, and half day Sunday. But we always went out after the Friday session. So, if you're starting early, and this was like an 8 o'clock in the morning start, you're pretty tired. So he had a cup of coffee in his hand, no lid, right? And he had the guy punch, and he moved, and he countered in the octagon movement, and he didn't spill his coffee. And somebody made a comment on it. He says, I need a coffee right now. You guys want me to start, so bear with me, right? And that he was accused later on of showing off, but he really wasn't. It just simply works. And it works because he's moving his lower base. He's not moving. If he was moving his upper base, the coffee would fly everywhere. He's moving his lower base first. And that's where you want to get to be with that kind of training. It's not your feet, not the lower base. You're not stepping. You're rotating the hips, and the legs follow the hips. Right? So it's the lower base motion first. And that's what allows you in a close quarter section to get out of the way, but at the same time be able to trap what has come forward because it is so close. And we trap what has come forward, then you can do something about it. Years ago, I had a friend come into my dojo when I was in Windsor and teach a knife course. And Chad Berry, brilliant martial artist, he taught, and I completely agree with this, you teach somebody how to take a knife and cut somebody up with it. You don't teach them how to defend against it because you can't. Right? You have to learn how the knife works and learn how you would apply it. Then you can start to see signs with other people. And one of the things he mentioned is, you both got a knife. Well, what he's going to do is he's going to stick that knife into pericardium 2 and bleed the guy out. Now, in a court of law, he attacked what was attacking him. If he reaches up and cuts the guy's throat, he's going to prison, right, for murder. If he attacks the knife hand and the guy ends up losing his life, it's a different story. No, it's still going to be messy, of course, but it's a different story. You can still plead self-defense, even if you had a knife on you, right? Because your intent was not to go out and murder somebody. Your intent was to stop the attack, called reasonable force. I'm hoping this answers the question as best I can. It's 5 o'clock in the morning here, and this is a question that I can't, if I present a technique on it, then people start to look for the technique for the solution, whereas the solution is a lot of training around the idea. Now, with the ambulance attendants, basically, this is what I taught them. They loved it. I could not record it because they did not want it to get out and for government people to find out that this is what they were doing to protect themselves, because they were concerned about their jobs. And yeah, I can see that. I can see that because the government's malevolence is well known. And, whether it be the modern era or always, the worst thing the one thing you ever want to hear is a knock on your door and somebody going, "I'm from the government, I'm here to help you," because that's just not simply the truth. Right? I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Have a great day and talk soon. Bye for now.